and welcome back to Weekend Walkabout in our gardens. I'm still Janet.
I'm still Stephen.
We're still gardenatoz.org, and this is chapter 2 about using the shrub pruning guide that we've given you in Pruning Evergreens, Shrubs and Trees. And that's what we're doing. We're going to show you how to use it. So you have a list of plants, and you've got a list of directions. You can download this from our website at the webinar's audience notes page. So for instance, arborvitae has several things there that go to directions number 6, 7, and 8. So arborvitae, there's a pyramidal arborvitae. Couldn't even see into the backyard. I've taken it down, and in this case, I did it in the late fall after leaf drop. I took it down about 3-4 feet. And on the sides, took it in 3 or 4, well, actually about 2 feet. So I was less on the bottom.
Pretty close.
And that's different than pruning an arborvitae. That's a pom-pom, which I prune usually in August each year. Shearing, so you have that indiscriminate cut to make the shape, and then taking stubs out. So those things are described for you. Cut it back hard before bud break if you're pruning it like I did that pyramidal one. And if you're pruning it into a shape, a tight shape, put up number 7, put up with irregularities until August, and then cut for the shape or size. So that's the way that this works. Look up your plant, look up our number, and it'll take you to our recommendations for how you prune the plant. Barberry?
Wear gauntlets.
Yes. Well, barberry is a bad plant. It spreads itself around. There's one in our woods here that put itself there too. And I have to keep ripping them out. But it's a pretty plant. And you can, by pruning it this way, cut it all the way to the ground every few years, even every couple of years. If you keep it from blooming, you can't spread around by seed. And it's a lot easier to cut it back when it doesn't
tie it up, cut it, tie it up, cut one cut, and drag it away. You don't have to reach your hand in there very much at all.
Okay. So prune it, as it says in number 3. Cut it to remove dead and weak wood, prune it in spring, or cut it all the way to the ground every few years. Dogwood, like red twigs and yellow twigs, they're 2s and 3s. Cut it back in early spring, cut it to remove the serious or seriously shortened wood, prune in spring. At the beginning of your directions, it says, quick reference, if you see numbers 1, 2, 3, or 6, that's a spring thing. Don't worry about it. Look for the ones you want to do in the summer, like the 12s and 7s and 8s, like false cypress that you're shaping. So there's your gold mop on the top left. Got a whole article on pruning these guys and keeping them looking like that. That guy's 20 years old, and it's still just stomach high for me. The one on the right is, it's going on 20 years old now too, and we keep it that size. It's in an article.
You said right, that's middle.
Oh, middle, sorry. And on the right is an Alaska false cypress, which grows 3 feet a year. So on the top left, before it's cut in August, every 2 years. On the right, after it's cut in August, every 2 years. And that's by reaching in and taking out branches back to the stiffer wood and leaving the nice side branches that have a nice droop to them. This one had grown too far on the top left, so we're bringing it back. And on the bottom right, see, you can see into it. That's not going to last forever, but you can see into it to start with. And actually, it looked like midway through, it looked like the top right.
Yeah.
And that did lose us a lot of the yellow foliage to start with.
You have to put up with some loss to get gains.
Yep, and what you're taking out is the dominant wood. You're taking out the thicker branch with the orange arrow there in order to let the smaller ones take over. If you're keeping a false cypress sculpted and small, do it while it's candling.
Yeah.
I don't like anybody to keep false cypress sculpted and small.
No.
They're so beautiful. I mean, look at
just let it go.
I mean, look at the character of that plant. Is that beautiful?
That's the 5-foot, 6-foot top.
Yeah, I would just every 3 years or so take out a 5 or 6 foot top and use it as a Christmas tree.
We do branches.
If it's been too big already, there's a direction there, number 8. Cut it back hard, do it in spring, cut it selectively. Don't leave bare wood at the tip. So you've got your directions here. We're not going to go through this in detail because the detail is all there on these pages for you. Your directions are on 9, 10, and 11. The plant list is elsewhere. You want to click on that.
Oops, sorry.
Junipers. There's some spring pruning you can do on some junipers, but mostly 12, 7, and 8. So this juniper was taking over the parking lot, and we cut it back. and it's still feathery. It's still beautiful because we cut back
And it
main
looks the way it's
branches.
supposed to, not a wall of juniper. It's
Yeah.
got feathers.
Had to work on this one for a while because they were putting in a new deck instead of the old one that was there, but wanted to keep it. So in 2015, I cut it back in August. And then you're looking at it in February of 2 years later, where I've started cutting it again, taking out what was dead, but it's filled back in. Compare the bottom right, which is winter, so it's a duller color, to the upper right. And you can see the fill and the featheriness that started again. Those directions are there for you there. Janet saying, I'm going to cut it to right here and cutting it to right there, and it still looks feathery. We call that article shag cut for a low juniper, and the picture on the right is showing you how many different places you could cut that juniper branch.
That's clip, one branch cut in a bunch of pieces.
All those places you can cut it back to.
And all of them would work.
9-bark, I showed you cutting them back the way we do when they have room to grow. If they don't have room to grow, 9-bark, smaller than its potential, but keeping it natural, we do number 4. After it peaks, sometime before mid-July, or before the end of July anyway, clip it as high as you want it to go, and then shorten or remove branches that already bloomed. So here it is in the spring. And then after it's bloomed, I'm going to go in and take whole branches out way down low, just like I showed you, but they're not, I can't let them get that big. I take about this much out. You can see it in the background. I've taken, these are the older branches I've taken out on the tarp in the foreground. The plant is the purple leaves in the back. I'm sorry that the light is bad, so you can't see as well. Now I'm going to shorten the remaining stems. I'm going to shorten those. And then the next year, there it is again.
Surprise, surprise.
And I do it again. And that keeps new growth coming from deeper in the plant. It leaves blooming aged wood on the plant because anything I leave with side branches is going to bloom the next year. And that's the only way I've been able to control 9-bark and white Julia. And every year it's more comes out of it there. See, I've taken the branches out, the old branches out, and then what's left are the thin branches back there, which I then shorten. Doesn't, about 2 weeks later, you can't tell anybody did anything to it. Okay, branches, big branches out, remaining branches shortened. And then in the next spring, it looks like that. And you can start, I got to where I said, okay, I'm taking some out in the spring too, when I can see.
Go in and get those bigger ones.
Yeah. Okay, mugo pines. That's a mugo pine. That's a dwarf mugo pine. Oh, there's 2 of them there.
There might, 2, 3 even maybe,
Yeah.
but.
Those are dwarf mugo pines. Dwarf does not mean tiny. This one was too big in front of Sue's house. I said, well, I'll take it out. But in the meanwhile, let me show you how you can cut it back, because it was as big as you see on the left there. But I can cut all those branches back to those white circles that you see where I've cut. As long as I cut to a side branch that has young needles on it and buds, that goes up to a budded branch, I can cut it right there or to any place like that and have it grow. So I could cut it shorter. You can see the green right on the inside. I could cut it all the way down to a foot tall by taking out the branches that don't have anything on them. But that would be silly. She wanted a new plant. We put a new plant in. They didn't want a new plant, but it had been sheared and sheared and sheared and sheared repeatedly to where
over and over and
all
over.
that dead wood built up. So I took out all the dead wood, which is a terrible, terrible, tedious job going into the inside of the plant. But this is now a year and a half later. Look how beautiful they are and how green they are.
Yep.
But you got to go in and take back. You can see the little bits of green way in. And I said, okay, I'm cutting back to you guys.
Gotta look close on some plants.
So on the upper left is when I first started with it. On the bottom right is a year and a half later. We're getting some fill. There's a Pruning pine, or there's a white pine on a standard. 2 articles on the website, among others on pines. So if there's anyone who is going to stay with us rather than go out on this gorgeous day right away.
It's gorgeous here where we are.
We're only 5 minutes over, but any question that's left on chat now, either it's there already and not answered, or you can type it in before you go. I will put those into a chat transcript, and Steve and I will post those on the website. And when we let you know where the recording is, where the link for the recording is, we'll also send that transcript to you. So you can stay with us, or if not, I'm really glad that you could be here today, and I hope you have a great gardening day. Looks like it's going to be a wonderful one.
Every day is a great gardening day, to be honest.
Okay, now while we do questions now, why don't you stop share, Steve, and we'll speak with our hands. Okay, so are there any other questions left?
There's lots of them.
Okay, if there are, okay, that's you choose, Anne. If it looked to you like it was a question of the masses, then good one. Maybe there.
Yeah, okay. How about, we have one about a forsythia that was uprooted a month ago.
Uprooted, yeah.
Yeah, because there was a repair at the house.
Oh, right.
The leaves were wilted. She's been watering it. What does she do?
Put it back in the ground
Mhm.
and watch it for a week or two. If it remains wilted, cut those branches back. Look for where the new growth is coming from. It's very difficult to kill a forsythia. Even though it may have wilted, I'm pretty sure that it will sprout back from the ground. I've often cut forsythia to the ground in July because they were too big, and we just cut them to the ground and they come back again. But let it stay in the ground, put it into its new place, into the ground, and water it. Let's see if the roots and the action that those leaves are doing can pull some water up, because the leaves, photosynthesis actually pulls water up into the plant. So you need some leaves to get that started.
Okay, so when you're taking out crossing wood suckers and deadwood, you are also taking leaf matter. If you
Yes.
want to make it smaller, you may have to take large portions, so you have to be careful about taking less than a third of the leaves, then what?
Well, you try to take less than a third of the leaves, but that's not always possible. And it's not deadly. Plants make enough energy. Hang on one second, I'm going to get something here. If I shorten this Japanese maple, and this is a piece I took off of that maple that I showed you earlier. If I shorten this maple by removing this branch right here, I'm going to be taking probably a third of the leaves off. The remaining leaves can duplicate themselves. There's enough energy still left in the plant that they can make their own leaf mass twice, and probably still have energy left to be starch for the plant. Can you hold the base for me?
Yep.
But if I needed to take off more than that, if I could just make sure that the plant is well cared for next year. Okay, you hold up yours and I'll hold up mine. Say it was a crossing branch. I've got probably about a third of the foliage, maybe only a quarter of the foliage here. But if I needed to take another branch, because I do need to shorten it further down to let this branch be the top, then I'm going to take more out, and it's not going to kill the plant. But the more that I take out, the more I need to, A, make sure the plant's got resources next year. Don't leave it sitting in a drought. And the more that I want to be sure not to do that heavy pruning in the early spring when it's in active growth, because then it will sucker in more places and become more of a tangle for me to sort out. I hope that makes sense. But that's one of the reasons that I write these things up in a chat too. It gives me a chance to spell them out a little bit more clearly.
Several questions about being able to take some of those branches that you've cut off and stick them in the ground and regrow them.
You can definitely grow fast growing things like willows and box elder and
Dogwood has done it for us.
Yeah, his uncle used to stick things in the ground every fall and they would grow. But not in most cases, that's not going to work. There's too much wood and leaf and not enough root to pull up enough water. In most cases, you're going to take a tip growth.
Tip growth.
So I'm going to take the softwood. It's a little bit past time to take the best cuttings.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go to the end of the branch where it's just become snap. It's not soft anymore, this new growth. It will snap. If I can take the wood that will snap and take a little bit of wood, I now have a nice cutting. I can rip off these leaves, and rip is what you do. You want to injure that part. And I can stick this in the ground to where that's buried. and I've got enough leaf surface, and especially if I build a little terrarium tent over it with clear plastic, this will root and grow very rapidly. You can see how rapidly it grows.
It should root and grow
Yeah.
real rapidly.
So you could make 100 plants out of that plant, but to make just one and stick it in the ground, go ahead and try it, but not the best way to go.
Okay, can pruning help prevent disease on mature blue spruce?
Yes, if you're taking on a blue spruce that has a problem with canker, it's had its name changed. The disease has had its name changed a couple of times, but there is a fungus that infects blue spruce and kills the branches, and the branches will have sap weeping from them, and the branch will die back to the point where that is. If you keep removing those branches so that the fungus spores are not floating around in the air, injuring more spruce branches, you can keep it better. And you can also keep it more open so more air can move through it. And
that's what might help more than anything else, is letting the airflow go through.
Yeah, that and better water and less competition at the roots. Take the grass away from it, put it in a bed so that there's so that it can grow like it's out in the open. Grass doesn't grow in the Colorado altitudes where that plant grows.
Not Kentucky bluegrass.
No.
Okay, a Miss Kim lilac only has leaves at the very top. It's 25 years old. Can it be cut back now? And if they do cut it back now, there won't be any green leaves.
There will be. If you cut that Miss Kim all the way back now, you'll still get new growth this year. Miss Kim is a pretty remarkable regenerator.
Isn't it?
There is an article called a Lilacs Annual Cut on our website, and it shows the pictures of that being done. In that case, because the owners wanted us to leave some bloom, we cut almost all of the stems back right away, and then cut the rest back the next spring when it bloomed. But the pictures are there to show you what it looks like. But you can cut it back right now.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Shelley Welsh. Hi, Shelley.
Hi, Shelley.
Janet, you know my Colorado blue spruce growing across the walkway up to 7 feet high.
Yes.
They're tall to shape on the top, and she's taken limbs out every Christmas. Now what?
At a certain point, we have to give up because we have to trim the top as well as the bottom. Otherwise, it just starts shading the bottom part. It's a what do you call that? Planned obsolescence. We have to plan for it to go. And I think, Shelley, you planted one little fir already this year. That's going to take over. We have some very nice little bitty firs in our yard we can start putting in, but there is the point of no return on a spruce, that when the top gets too high and the outside gets too wide.
We're reaching that point with the one we've been working on since in 10 years.
Yeah, the only way that you can do then is to take the whole branches off to the trunk and make what some people call a Michigan palm. So you got all the foliage up there. It doesn't work to be a block between you and the neighbors anymore. So you start thinking about another plan. Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of interesting. It's a bush magnolia. It was just new last summer, but was already a good size. In the winter, the deer stripped the bark off 2 of the main branches. In the spring, the buds were hit with an early freeze.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, as it looked hollow in the middle and the branches around the sides were okay, but a few branches were going to the side. He left the stripped branches in and staked up a few side branches and hoping they would grow upwards. It looks like it was doing that, but now the leaves are turning yellow and unhealthy.
Yeah, chances are that there was damage low down on the plants, and those, being a magnolia, they did get infected in that wood. And what's happened is during the year, the fungus has been growing as the tree has been growing, and it's finally gotten big enough to be girdling the stem. So now that it's hotter and drier, the plant doesn't have enough cambium connection between leaf and bottom. You're looking for growth to come from below all that damage. And that exact thing happened to a bush form star magnolia at a client's, where the deer just put their antlers in and rattled the living daylights out of it.
Ripped it up.
Took all the damaged wood out, take it all out, and let it come. And you can wait and do it in the springtime on a dry day or on a winter thaw. But let it regenerate from below the damaged part.
There's times where bucks do the rub and you think it went all the way around and the tree isn't going to do anything, and then it leaves out and you go, oh, it's going great. And then a come the dry time in August, it just doesn't have the energy left in it. We're looking at a ginkgo right now, wondering it's still going, but is it going to make it? Because it was really beat up.
Those darn magnolias, though, we put them in because the deer don't eat them, but the deer like beating up on them.
Wow.
So once you cut it back, you're going to need to protect it. And with bucks, the repellents really don't keep them from rubbing things. It might at first, but offenses.
They're already mad that they lost the fight with the bigger bucks, so they're going to rip up something.
Yeah. Okay, onward. Let's do 2 more, and then I'll download the chat and we'll take it from there.
Okay, I think we're going to hit most of them. Do you have any tips for pruning an overgrown rhododendron with big braided branches?
Braided branches.
Were they're
twisted
like
around
that?
each other? Yeah. Well, I have sorted out the one with the borer in it was started out that way. You have to bite the bullet and cut some things back. They sprout. Rhododendrons will sprout from brown wood. So you can cut it to a stump and they'll sprout. But you have to let light reach the place that you cut. So you have to pick a few branches and say, I'm taking this one out. And when they're braided like that, you have to take the weight off the branch first. And sometimes you have to cut the branch 2 or 3 times and take it out in sections.
Take it in sections, yeah. Otherwise, you're damaging both of them.
Right. And then the branch that you left behind when you took out one of the braided branches, you're going to end up taking that one out after new growth comes from underneath. So it's kind of a 2-step process. 3-step process. We do have pictures of some of that on the website, but that one still remains to be put up, the whole long process of doing that.
Okay, I'm thinking that we've got most of them.
Great.
Okay.
That is a successful webinar. Congratulations. Congratulations to you. And for, I know that's something.
We have a hand up, though.
Oh, there's a hand up?
Oh, it disappeared. Marilyn had a hand.
I think it was Marilyn.
Marilyn Olympich, she had a hand up for a minute.
Yep. Well, if you'd like to speak, go ahead, Marilyn. Otherwise, we're going to, I will read through the whole chat because a couple of those I need to go back over and put them together so that people can revisit them. And we are really glad that you could join us.
Go back to share.
Go back to share. We're going to finish up with a formal
ta-ta for
formal
now.
ta-ta. Yeah. And so that's all for chapter 2.
A weekend walkabout.
Pruning Evergreens, Shrubs and Trees. Have a great gardening week. We at gardenataz.org are glad you joined us. I'm Janet.
I'm Stephen.